How's everybody doing today? Good? Good? All right. So anyone who knows me, right, knows that a huge part of my life are quotes, right? They keep me going every day. I put them everywhere from my Facebook profile to the margins of my notebook. And some of my favorite quotes are by people that you all know. They're probably quotes that you've seen before, like this one. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he said, "Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle." And I think I've seen this quote about 1,000 times in my life, and I'm sure you all have too. But I think it was only until very recently that I was able to internalize what this quote actually meant, right? And I think when you ask most people what change is, most people say change is a moment in time, right? It's a point where A becomes B or X becomes Y. And I think if you ask other people who think about it a little bit more, they'll acknowledge that change is a process, right? So there's a sort of time period between A becoming B or X becoming Y. But what change really is, especially if it's lasting change, change is a struggle. It's a struggle between what is and what could be. And so oftentimes you get naysayers who say, oh, you can't change this or you can't change that. But the reality is that those naysayers don't understand that change is a struggle. And in that sense, the real question is how determined, how resolute, and how inspired you are to make a difference. So to put it very simply, change is how much you're willing to struggle for a particular cause. And this is something, like I said, that I learned very recently. Father Curry gave it away, but 10 months ago, I announced that I was running for city council in Newark, New Jersey. And consequently trying to become the youngest person ever elected in the city of Newark. And so this journey has been inspired by a struggle, right? I've encountered so much of a struggle. Newark is my home and I love it, but Newark is a city facing so many problems. We have a poverty rate where more than 50% of our 5-year-olds live under. We have an unemployment rate that's nearly 14%, nearly double the national average. And in my city, the majority of victims and perpetrators of gun violence are young black men, 18 to 25. Needless to say, my city is going through some problems. And so when I announced 10 months ago that I was running for Newark City Council, I used this hashtag, Change Newark. And a lot of my friends have probably seen this all over the place. It's on my Twitter, it's on my literature, because I wanted people to understand that for me, it wasn't just about policy options. Policy options was just a half of it. The second half of it was how can I bring back inspiration, bring back hope, bring back determination into a city that's lost so much of it. And so I introduced this hashtag, Change Newark, and it was all over the place. And I'll never forget, at my first public event as a candidate, it was a community meeting on Alexander Street. This is Alexander Street. Now, you can't tell it from this picture, but Alexander Street is one of our most challenging streets in the city of Newark. In the past 2 years, Alexander Street has seen an uptick in automobile thefts, in armed robberies, and a poverty rate that's slowly increasing. So last January, I was in a community meeting further down this block. It was a library. And I'm in the community meeting talking about how we can make Alexander Street safer and stronger. And so a bunch of people are coming up to me, congratulating me on the decision to run, saying that they're so excited that young people are getting involved. And so I'm talking to these people, and I can see this elderly woman on the side of the room, and she's just looking at me, giving me this look. Now, my mom and my grandmother have given me enough looks in my lifetime to know that when someone's looking at me, they got something to say to me. So she waits, she's still in the corner, and she's waiting until everyone disperses. And this elderly woman approaches me. She's really small. She couldn't have been any more than 5'1", 5'2". And she approaches me. She's small, but she's mighty. And she comes over, and she waves me here, and I bend down, and she says, "Baby, I want you to win, and I wish you the best, but I hope you're prepared to struggle." She said, "I hope you're prepared to struggle." And at first I was thrown off guard because I didn't know if I was supposed to take offense or whether it was a warning. And so I pressed her a little bit more about what she meant, and she told me that if I ever want to change anything in Newark, it wasn't going to be a race, it was going to be a marathon, right? A marathon full of steep hills and slippery slopes that would come all in the form of my criticisms of my age, my experience, and even my lack of facial hair. And so I'll never forget, I left that meeting that day, and so many people had said so many different things to me, but all I could think about was what this woman had said to me, this idea that change was a struggle. I mean, I always knew that change didn't come easy. I always knew it required some sort of effort, but this idea that change is a struggle, a battle between what is and what could be, it actually kind of scared me. But the more I thought about it, the more it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes by Teddy Roosevelt. I told you I'm a quote person. And President Roosevelt said, "Never throughout history has a man who lived a life of ease left a name worth remembering." And so I thought about that quote coupled with what this elderly woman was telling me, and I thought about moments in history where people have struggled for change, right? First, the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was able to fundamentally change race relations in this country because the people involved in it, whether it was the March on Selma or the Montgomery bus boycott, the people involved with it struggled for the change they wanted to see. They sacrificed their jobs, they put their lives at risk every day. They spent day after day in the hot southern sun, all in the name of change. And here we are, 50, 60 years later, thanking them for their efforts. Their struggle paid off. And then you think about people like Harvey Milk, right? Advocating for gay rights in a time where being gay in America was highly unpopular. He struggled for the change he wanted to see. And not just him, but the thousands of other people like him struggled for the change they wanted to see. And here we are 30 years, 40 years later, after his assassination, and people were thanking him every day for the struggle that he took on. And so in contrast, you all have to think about something like Congress, right? An institution that's designed to make change, full of people who are paid to make valuable and lasting change in this country, and they can't, right? And I've always wondered really why they can't create change. And then this elderly woman came and gave me the secret. It's because they don't struggle for the change that they want to see. They sit in halls not too far from here and they bicker amongst themselves without ever really understanding things. A lot of Congress people will never know what it's like to have your social services cut. A lot of Congress people will never know the ramifications of a government shutdown. And a lot of them will never know what it's like to spend your entire life in a country and be told you can't go to college or you can't become a citizen. They don't struggle for the change they want to see. They let partisanship and greed get in the way of making lasting change. And so, just to be clear, when I say struggle for change, I think the struggle for change involves three things, right? Understanding, love, and resilience. You have to understand the issue that you want to change. When I decided I wanted to run for Newark City Council, I spent 6 to 8 months forming an exploratory committee to see if it was actually viable. I spent 8 months going around to different community leaders, different meetings, seeing what the issues were and seeing what my place was in the solution. And so I think the second thing that this struggle for change involves is love, right? One of my favorite thinkers, Cornel West, said, "You can't lead the people if you don't love the people. You can't save the people unless you serve the people." And so when I think about my commitment to Newark, the reality is that I love Newark, right? Newark is my home. A big part of who I am today is because of the people in Newark, people who sacrificed for me, whether it was my coach who gave me rides home from school because, it was too late for me to take the bus, or whether it was my teacher who spent 2 hours extra after school tutoring me in math without being paid so I wouldn't fall behind. So I love the people of Newark. And so that's why I'm willing to take on this struggle. And so I think the third thing that this struggle for change involves is resilience. There are going to be so many times where you want to give up and forget that you ever took on this cause. There have been days where I've had dozens of doors slammed in my face when I'm out canvassing. There have been days where I had rallies and people have heckled me from cars. And the only thing that keeps me going is this resilience telling me that this is all a part of the change. It's all a part of the struggle for change. So back to this older woman who approached me at Alexander Street. Throughout the 10 months of my campaign, I've seen her at every campaign event. And every time I see her, I'm reminded of the struggle I'm in. And trust me, every time she sees me, she reminds me of the struggle that I'm in. And so sometimes this struggle comes in a lot of different ways, right? Sometimes it comes in the form of pushback, people who say you're too young or too inexperienced. And so sometimes this struggle comes in the form of sadness, like here. This was over the summer. This was a community back-to-school event on South 11th Street, one of Newark's most dangerous communities, right? And so I'm on stage, just like I am now, and I'm talking about how we can make this school year safer. You know, how we can reduce murders, how we can reduce robberies, especially for young people. And so I get off this stage and I get into the car with my campaign manager, Chad Montague, and we're headed to another event. And in 15 minutes after I get off this stage, I get a text from my field director who's still there. And he says 2 people have been shot and murdered around the corner from where this event was. And so this rush of sadness came over me, and I was just like, this can't be changed. How could it happen in an event like this? And then I thought about this older woman, and I remembered that this is all a part of the struggle. So sometimes it comes in the form of sadness, and sometimes it comes in the form of anger, like this event. This was a community-run event over the summer, and the idea behind this event was we wanted to gather as many people in the community as possible and take community jogs through neighborhoods that have been neglected, through neighborhoods that have been forgotten. And so I'm running down our campaign is running down one particular block, and we meet these group of kids, and they're so excited about what we're doing. And, you know, we engage them, we ask them what they want to see in Newark, and they tell us that they want a basketball court. They want a basketball court to play at. And they have the space for it, but the city took down the basketball court. And so if anyone who knows anything about growing up in an urban environment has to understand that something as simple as a basketball court could be the difference between life and death for a lot of these kids. And so my campaign is sending emails, you know, we're going down to City Hall, we're advocating for this basketball court, and we're being told that it's gonna be built. And then 6 months later, it still hasn't been built. And so I'm so angry. But then I have to remember that it's all a part of the struggle. And so the great thing about struggle, sometimes it's dense and difficult, but the great thing about struggle is that when you're in it, when you're down fighting for the change you want to see, you find that there are dozens of other people doing exactly the same thing. Dozens of other people who have found a problem they want to solve and are out here trying to make it happen. Take Carolyn Wallace. Carolyn Wallace is a superwoman in Newark, right? 30 years ago, she started an organization called IYO to give kids on the street an alternative, right? So she brings them in and she gives them practical skills that allow them to market themselves. Carolyn Wallace has been through a struggle. When she started this organization, she had no backers. She used her own money to pay for this program. And in fact, this event was a fundraiser for her because she was retiring and she had zero money in her bank account because she used all her money into this program. So this event was actually a fundraiser for her. But anyway, her organization was so profound and she's hit so much struggle, bureaucracy, complacency. And now, 30 years after it's been started, when she's about to retire, she has an alumni base over 1,000 Newarkers who have gone through her program, who have benefited, who are now lawyers, mayors, councilpersons. So her struggle is starting to pay off. And then another person you find in the struggle, one of my personal heroes, probably my favorite hero, is my mom, right? My mom raised me as a single parent, right? She worked 3 jobs just so I could have better opportunities than she did. And my mom has struggled to make change in our community. I think that's where I get it from, right? When she goes to the supermarket to buy groceries, right? She doesn't just buy groceries for herself. She buys groceries for the neighborhood. When we get back, we'll take the bags out the car and I'll follow her and we'll walk down the street and we'll ask people if they need food, whether it's bread, whether it's eggs, whether it's meat. And my mom, despite her own financial limitations, she continues to do this because she believes that there's change to be made and she's willing to struggle for it. And so my mom is really my personal hero. And so not just these 2 people, but there are dozens of other people in Newark, dozens of other people in this room who are striving to make change, who are struggling to make change. You all have recognized the problem, you understand the problem, you love the people affected by the problem, and you have the resilience to keep going. And so I'm happy to say that 10 months later, my campaign has been going on for 10 months and we have 6 months to go. But 10 months into it, we've been struggling, right? We've hit so many blockades, but our struggle is finally starting to pay off, right? We've done everything from help residents get jobs so they can provide from their families. We've helped to reinvigorate community block associations. We've done all this in the name of struggle. And by no means do we think that our struggle is done, right? We know we have 6 months left, and even after that, we have years of struggling to do before we create the change that we want to see. But the great thing about this struggle, when I'm in the trenches fighting for the change I want to see in Newark, is that there are people that are down there doing exactly the same thing, fighting every day to make change. And these people aren't superheroes. A lot of them don't have college degrees or fancy PR teams. These people are just selfless individuals who have the courage and who have the boldness and who have the audacity to take up an issue and struggle to change it. And so to all of you, next time you wake up and you say, I want to change something, whether it's in yourself, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your workplace or your school, ask yourself, am I ready to struggle for that change? Do I understand the issue? Do I love the people affected by the issue? And do I have the resiliency to keep going? And so it wouldn't be right if I didn't leave you all with one of my favorite quotes, right? By Frederick Douglass. And I'm sure you all have heard the first line, but I highly doubt if you've heard the rest, right? So if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet depreciate agitation, are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning, and they want the ocean without the mighty roars of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one. It may be a physical one, let's hope not. But it must be a struggle. And with that said, I wish you all the best on your struggles.